Hey everybody, welcome back to Behind the Build with Scott and Deven. I'm Scott.
And I'm Deven.
Today's episode 2, and on today's episode, we're going to talk to you guys about customer responsibilities within the Mitchell Homes contract. This is something that comes up a lot. Everybody always has a lot of questions about it. We feel like there's a lot of misunderstanding, and we just want to communicate directly with you and kind of go over all of the things that you may or may not be responsible for, depending on which way you choose to go with your contract.
Right, and your lot and things like that. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to give you kind of a high level overview of what those customer responsibilities are. We'll do a podcast later, kind of really getting into the weeds on certain things so that you really have a clear understanding of what it means when we say certain words, septic, well, things like that you may not even be familiar with. So today's conversation is really going to be high level. So we hope you guys enjoy. Take lots of notes, send in your questions. We'll be saying this throughout the podcast. You know, we always want that interaction. So let's get into it.
Yeah.
What's the first thing that a customer should be worried about or thinking about when we're talking about customer responsibility?
So Deven, the first responsibility is going to be obtaining financing. And it's something that's kind of scary to a lot of people,
Sure.
but you know, I think we make it pretty easy. We have a list of partner lenders who we partner with, who know us well, we know them well, they do a great job. And we're going to help with that. We're going to connect each and every customer with one of the lenders that best suits their needs. But it is, up to them to return the documents back to the lender that they require so that they can get a pre-approval, which will allow us to get started.
Right.
And we'll get more into this too, but the one thing that's unique about Mitchell Homes, and we talk about this a lot, it's in all of our marketing and advertising, are our Simply Mitchell advantages.
That's right.
And with that, we don't use traditional construction financing. So what we'll do is we'll connect you with a lender to set you up for a mortgage loan, right? So it's not going to be a construction loan.
Right, so no construction loan. They need to get their financing. When they come in the early onset of a meeting with the new home sales consultant, they're going to get pre-qualified, right?
Right.
So they'll get a pre-qualified, you'll get pre-qualified, and then after that, there's still subsequent things that need to be done in order to really get and secure financing. So those are things that they need. That'll be an ongoing mission, as it were, for the customer. And like Scott said, we're going to help you through that entire process. We have preferred lenders. What is it, 5 or 6 preferred lenders?
Yeah, I think we have 5 preferred lenders, maybe 6. They're all great. They're in all of our areas, so we have somebody who's local to everybody.
Right.
Who will
and
be
they
able
specialize in certain ones, right? So
they do.
Different lenders specialize in. This isn't my forte. This is really Scott's thing, but large parcel type loans,
right.
Things like that. So I think we've got you guys covered there, but it is like the first step on the road once you've made the choice with Mitchell Homes to kind of get that sorted out. And we have all those lenders and the salespeople and everybody here to help support you in that endeavor.
Yeah, and our sales team knows who the best lender is for you. We do get a lot of people that ask us about VA loans. We have great lenders for VA loans, FHA loans, USDA loans, conventional loans, every type of loan, that's out there, we can do it, and we've got very competitive rates with our lenders.
Do they have to go with one of our lenders?
You don't have to use one of our lenders. We recommend that you use one of our lenders. If you do use our lenders, then we pay your closing costs at the end. So there's a financial advantage to using one of our lenders. And the reason we do that is not because we're getting a kickback or anything like that. It's because they know us.
Right.
And we know them, and we know that it's going to go smoothly. And a lot of times, if it's a lender that we don't know, they may not know our process. We may get a pre-approval, and then something doesn't work out. They may have missed something, overlooked something, just because they don't really know our business and building on your lot. It's just it's kind of a unique animal.
Well, building on your lot is as you will learn, is a unique thing. So having someone that understands what we do is definitely a benefit for you. So they've secured financing. We've started down the road. In order for us to really get started, we have to have a deed.
Right. Yeah.
That's the first thing that they got to have after financing, right?
Right. Yeah. We can't lock in the price of the home until we have that deed.
Right.
Because without the deed, we don't really know that we have any land to build on. Right.
That's right.
It needs to be a recent deed that's updated, that's not out of date. It has to have your names on it saying that you own that property. And once we have that deed, that's when we ratify the contract. You'll hear that term from our salespeople. So you can sign a contract, but really until we have that deed, we don't ratify it. And once we ratify it, that's when your price locks in. And that starts what we call our 150-day price guarantee.
Ratifying, unless you don't have a deed, we can't, what we call ratify, which means execution of the contract, right? So it really can't, there's nothing that we can do with it. Prior to that, it kind of sits out there waiting for a whole litany of things. In the purchasing land conversation, we did touch on that pretty in depth, but we can't go forward without a ratified deed. And that is the insurance for everybody to feel good about what we're doing and where we're headed. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's the way we're able to do no financing or construction loans for the customer. That's how we can pay for those construction loans and make sure that all things move forward. And like Scott said, that kind of triggers our price lock. Right. And I think we should talk about that. It's not, there is responsibilities in that, but I think it's important to kind of touch on what that means when we talk about ratified and then the price lock happens. We have a 150-day guaranteed price lock. Other builders will do an escalation clause. Thank you.
Right.
Tell the folks, what does that mean really?
Yeah, so the escalation clause basically states that your price will fluctuate during construction based off of current market rates for materials. So if lumber prices are going up during construction, your price is going to go up with the lumber, accordingly.
Right.
That's true for any material. So it can be a garage door or a window or roofing or concrete, which those prices fluctuate. We don't have escalation clauses. We do have a 150-day price guarantee.
Right.
And basically the way that works is once the contract's ratified, so once we have a deed and a pre-approval, we don't have to have your final loan approval, just a pre-approval. Once we have that and the deed, we'll ratify the contract. That starts the clock on 150 days. So we have to get the house started within 150 days. And as long as we do that, then the price will stay the same.
Correct.
If we don't meet that date, then you would be subject to whatever the current pricing is on that home. So the base price on the home may have gone up, or you may have an option or two that may have gone up. Sometimes they can go, the base price is never going to go down. Options can fluctuate up or down here or there. It's not typical that you see prices go down. We're not getting price reductions from any of our subs or vendors.
Right. The big ticket things, commodity pricing, lumber, things like that, those things just tend to fluctuate all over the board, and we don't see a drop ever in those prices. We'll see a stay. Right. But we won't see like dramatic changes. And that lends itself into these customer responsibilities because it's a partnership from Mitchell Homes and you, the customer, to get us started in that 150 days. Right. And Mitchell Homes, all of our pre-construction coordinators, and you'll meet a lot of these folks, our sales team, our drafting team, our purchasing team, everybody's clued into this 150, and it's something that we talk about all the time in meetings about individual customers and where we are in that progression. What tends to happen in failure of that are some of the customer responsibilities. So this is what this video is for, is to educate you on what those are so you know going in the things that you're gonna have to touch on. And I guess the next big one is your utilities. Right. You've got well, you've got septic, and you've got power. Mm-hmm. Those three things are critical. And for some, it could also be gas. Depending on where you live, maybe there's a natural gas line stubbed already to your lot. A lot of times folks go with propane as a gas source. So those are the four areas in the utility portion that we really want to kind of talk about. What can they expect from Septics? How do we go about that? It may sound complicated. It's really not that complicated, but it kind of is at the same time. It is. If you don't know what you're looking for, it can be kind of overwhelming for sure. Yeah, I mean septic. We talked about this in the first podcast when you're purchasing land.
hopefully you've already had your lot perked.
Right.
But if you haven't, one of the responsibilities that you have is to get the lot perked.
That's an engineer, and they'll come out and do an evaluation of the land, and they'll make sure how the liquids flow through the soil. You could have a very porous ground. You could have very hard, dense dirt that doesn't percolate at all. And in that case, they offer up different septic systems.
Right.
The perk test is really what governs what type of septic system you have. And that's outside of Mitchell Homes. We don't make those evaluations. Those are done by state and local jurisdictions along with an AOSC. These folks are the ones who make those determinations.
Right, yeah, and the reason it is a customer responsibility and not a Mitchell Homes responsibility is because it's your land. So we've never seen the land, we've never touched the land, and it's a variable price on this. So it depends on the soil. We talked about it with foundations. The soil can affect a foundation and a footer. Well, it also affects the septic system.
That's right.
So for that reason, we're going to help along the way with all of this stuff. We will coordinate. We've got awesome people here that know this stuff that'll help you every step of the way. But we do ask that you get a perk test, and then that perk test will be it'll be
evaluated.
Yeah, it'll be evaluated. It'll be sent. We're gonna get you an estimate, right? So we're gonna send that. We're gonna get an estimate from somebody who we know and we trust and we know who does good work.
Right. Once we get the perk test, we can then go for estimates. And before we get too far down the road, so when you sit with your new home sales consultant, and you're gonna see these line items for allowances.
Right.
And there's well and septic allowances, there's extra foundation allowances, and there's different allowances that we have. The well and septic is always the biggest allowance. Right now we have a placeholder in there for $15,000 for each, the well and the septic.
Right.
And all that is a placeholder, so that as you get pre-qualified and you're looking at homes, we try to use that. That's about an average, but they change so much. It's hard because some can come under that.
Right.
Some can be significantly over that, and we just don't know that going in until we've had the perk test.
Yeah, I mean, we look at our averages at the end of every year to see how much it costs for a well and a septic, and so we're in 2024 now. The average was $30,000 for a well and a septic combined coming into this year. So that's what we use for the placeholder. It can be less. It can be more.
Right. So we get the perk test. You've executed the contract. You have your deed. You have your pre-qual. Now we've got the perk test. We have the evaluation. We know what we're going to get. You already have these placeholders in your contract, kind of as a guideline.
Right.
And now we get the system really evaluated, and we let you know. We'll get those estimates. We have a gal called Deborah. Everybody loves Deborah. Everybody enjoys talking with Deborah, and she's very good at what she does. In fact, we'll have another podcast introducing you guys to her, and she's going to really deep dive the different types of well and septic systems that we offer or that are out there.
Maybe. She doesn't want to. She says she's not coming in here.
She may not want to be on. She likes to talk, but she may not want to be on the camera. But we're gonna get her on.
We're gonna get her in here.
We're gonna get her in here, and she's gonna let you guys know all about the septic systems and stuff like that. But for purposes of this conversation, just as customer responsibilities, there are a few different types. There's a conventional or traditional. That tends to be the least expensive. Then we have an engineered, which can be, before that, there's the alternative, thank you. There's the alternative system that kind of graduates you a little further up the price index. Then the engineered, a little further than that. And she's going to explain what all these mean. And then the last really end of it is a direct discharge, which is a complicated one. We were talking with Deborah earlier. We've only done 3 of those this year. So it's not something that we do a ton of. Yeah,
that's if the land doesn't perk at all. And then basically the Department of Environmental Quality, the DEQ gets involved. It doesn't happen very often. Hopefully it doesn't happen, to any of you, but it is a possibility.
Runs through ultraviolet light.
Yeah.
There's a process to that, but we'll get into the weeds on that. But there's a few different places that you'll find yourself And then we'll get pricing. We'll get the estimates.
Right.
But Scott, it's still a customer responsibility in a way.
Right. Yeah. So the contract itself will be signed by you, and that has to be done that way. There's legal reasons for it, but also, you're going to have maintenance contracts with these contractors.
Right.
Especially if you have an engineered or an alternative system, you're required by your locality to have a maintenance contract on your septic. So the contract has to be between you and the well and septic contractor. We'll get a little bit more into the well. But again, we're going to facilitate everything. We're going to provide you with that contract. You're going to sign it and return it. And then we're going to take care of handling the scheduling and the installation of both the well and the septic during construction. So you don't have to worry about that. And we didn't used to do any of that. It used to be that the well and septic was 100% on the customer. We kind of wiped our hands clean of it because it was a touchy subject.
Right. We use tried and true guys. We have relationships with all of them. We know their work. We know they're trustworthy. We wouldn't put them to work if they weren't.
Yeah.
The reality is we pay them up front anyway.
Right.
So, we take care of that so that it's not a burden on you up front to come up with the cash for the well or the septic. So we want to make sure that we have good, competent contractors in those areas of the construction, and it's vital to execution of the 150.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you want to have a contractor that you can trust, and they trust us because they know they're going to get paid.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
They won't delay like they would if they're working directly with a customer.
And what tends to happen in the past, not to interrupt you, sorry, buddy.
Yeah, no worries.
When the homeowners held on to that responsibility totally,
right?
They would wait for payment. And the contractors are waiting all the way till when we're finished with the house. And then the house is done and they're 8 weeks out,
right?
12 weeks out before.
Right.
They could even get to you because they wanted to make sure that they could get paid right away. So we've taken all that away. We've simplified the process. So it really is a good system. It's the way that can keep costs down. It does, because the longer the schedule gets, the more expensive it is for everybody. But it's an important thing to understand that we're on your side here, and we're going to help make that possible.
Yeah.
You will have a part in it, though.
Yeah. And one last thing on that, we do get better pricing,
right?
Because we're using the same contractors over and over again.
Right.
So we've got, they're giving us better pricing. We're getting a little bit of a volume discount. So it's going to help you, as far as your pricing goes.
Right. So we've got the well. Well, we haven't talked about wells. Wells are pretty simple. There's two different types of wells. There's a mud well and a rock well. And there are two different types of drill rigs. Right. So depending on where you are, which location, which part of the states that we build in, that kind of makes the contractor determines what we're going to do. Finding water is no perfect science, but they know pretty well where they're going to find it. The depth is what gets the variable in well prices.
Right.
Is the depth, right?
Yes.
Septics, you have a very clear idea of what you're going to put on that lot, on that land, based on the perk test. You think you're 350 feet because they have data that says in this area wells are 350 feet or 200 feet, and it's going to make this much volume. It's going to make 5 gallons a minute. It's going to make 20 gallons a minute.
Right.
But they don't always know. So the variable in pricing usually has to do with the depth. Sometimes that happens as we're drilling.
Right.
It's not often, but it can happen.
They have to go deep.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes 600 feet and then they still don't hit water.
Right.
And then they have to frack.
Yep.
And, hopefully you can get water, but if you do, it may not be more than a couple gallons a minute,
right?
Which is fine. It's not ideal, but that can happen. It doesn't happen that often, but it happens a couple times a year maybe for us.
We hydrofrack a few times a year. It's not, or a cased well. Sometimes we have to do that or oversize the hole.
Yeah.
It's not the norm.
No, and some of them, we've had some that are 20 feet deep.
Yeah, dead closer to the water.
Yeah.
Some places like that. The next big one for utilities is power. You don't know how far away or how close power is to your property. It's something as you're going through the land purchase process, you probably want to at least get an idea. But there are some things that can frustrate folks with the power. One is it all overhead power? Do they have to bring overhead power, meaning from like poles the old-fashioned poles and they got to bring a pole overhead to your property? Or do they have to run a new transformer off a pole? You know, if you're set back 2,000 feet off the road, that's underground work that goes all the way to the house. You have to have that engineered and designed by your locality, your power locality.
You may be with an electric co-op, or you may be with Dominion or Duke Power, or one of the big power companies, you know, depending on the area where you're located.
Right.
You know, but I think the most important thing here, typically power isn't going to be an issue. We don't want to scare you guys on that. Power is typically pretty simple, but what we do require of you is you have to contact your power company
right away.
You're going to contact them. They're going to give you a number,
right?
And then you're going to provide us with that number, which allows us to then follow up on the design process,
right? And in your behalf. So we act as an agent with you, but it's very, very important that you reach out to the power company right away.
Yeah, and they won't let us. They won't let us do that. We would do it if we could, but they won't let us.
Yeah, they will not let us. And that's what we see when failure happens in that price lock, is that folks wait till, well, I won't need power for another month. My super told me we won't need power for a month, or my salesperson said we won't need power for 2 months or whatever. That process of design can take several months.
Right.
One of the things that happens around here locally, and I'm sure everybody in the audience knows, is we can have hurricanes or floods or storms of significant size, and the power companies just go dormant on any new residential stuff.
Right.
Because they're doing storm work or whatever the case is, and it may take you 2 months to get that engineered plan. That's important.
Yeah.
That you get that number as soon as you can.
Right.
And you go from there. There's another thing that you would be, sometimes it depends. I don't know, Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, but there are certain power companies that want you to pick up what they call the meter base from them and give it to us. Sometimes our electricians can get those. And all that is the housing that goes on the side of your building that the meter sets into.
Yeah.
Some of them are picky about that.
I don't know exactly which ones require that anymore. I don't think many of them do.
No.
I think in most cases, our electricians have them
Yeah.
or pick them up. They may have some in their truck or van. In some cases, I think, you know, you may still need to pick that up. But again, our supervisors, our superintendents,
That's right.
they'll let you guys know if that's something that you do need to do.
Right.
But, you know, for the most part, as long as you contact the power company, as soon as we start construction on the home, there shouldn't be an issue getting it designed and getting it in.
Right.
You know, you could run into a situation where your power line has to run over top of your neighbor's property.
Oh, yeah.
And then you have to get an easement.
That's
and
right.
you have to get your neighbor to sign that easement. So you just want to do it as soon as possible so that, you know, if an issue does come up, it doesn't delay us. Because if it delays construction, there could be, you know, if we're finished and we're sitting for 2 months because you haven't done what you're supposed to do, you know, there could be financial consequences to that.
Right.
And that's the last thing in the world anybody wants to do. We all want to get it built and get you guys in the house as quickly as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've got your power, you've got your well, you've got your septic. All those things are working. What's next on their list?
Before we move forward, let's go back real quick. Can you touch on what if they're on public water and sewer?
Oh, that's a good point. Public water and sewer is not a problem. The jurisdictions, and it just depends. This one's a big variable. So you could have city water that they force you to use. They're gonna make you pay what's called a tap fee. A tap fee is a fee that the city gets basically to pay for the water line or to subsidize schools. It could be an impact fee, we call it that too. But the tap fee can be, say it's $10,000, just making that number up. But that doesn't really get you your water line to your property.
Right.
That's just to tap into it. Then you may need to get a contractor to go do what's called a wet tap. A wet tap is, just as it sounds, you're tying into an active water line and you've got to put a saddle on it. There's some stuff that you do, but you've got to get that water now supplied to your lot. And then from your lot, it would be metered.
Right.
And then from the meter to the house. There are instances in a development a lot of times where the water line has already been provided to the lot, to the front of the lot, in which case that's the best case scenario.
Right.
If you have that, it's not a problem. It usually has a meter or a meter housing ready to go in on what we call the yoke. At that point, we just take it from the meter to the house. If it requires a wet tap, that can get costly, and there's a lot of approvals that have to happen. It's not impossible, but it can take what we budget is, say, $15,000 for water up to, I've seen crazy numbers. You'll want to check that as you get ready to build what you have there. Now, the sewer, if it's a city sewer, it's kind of the same thing. It's the same type of tap. If you have joined water and sewer, typically the tap fees will be combined, so you don't have to have a separate one, but the same process follows. And we can do them. Sometimes jurisdictions want their contractors to do it. So some towns and cities will have their specified contractors that will do the work, and they will only contract with the customer.
Right.
We can help with the financing part of it as long as we can get it in the loan, but they typically will not work with us directly. They'll want to work with the customers.
Right.
So that does get a little dicey. I would say we do 10, less than that, maybe 6 to 8 wet taps a year.
Right.
We did one that was 80 feet though. That wet tap was long because it didn't come out of the manhole, and that was a mess. But so it can happen.
It can.
It can happen. You need to be aware of that as you go in.
Some of them are really easy. We have one now where it's $2,500 for both of the water and sewer tap fees, and then it's another $4,000 for the connection. So the total was like $7,000.
Yeah, it's not bad.
It can be advantageous, but then you're paying monthly water and sewer bills as well. So your lot is going to tell you what you have to do.
That's right.
Whether it's well and septic or public water and sewer.
That's right. Those are important things to know. And those, again, are going to be customer responsibilities.
Right.
So once you have all this clerical stuff out of the way, because that's really what it is.
Right.
We'll take it from there. So that survey is important, because you can't do a perk test, you can't position a well. None of that stuff can really happen unless we have a location on your land, right?
Right, yeah. We need to know where the actual legal boundaries of the property are, to ensure that we're putting everything on your land. It used to be that
absolutely,
the localities didn't even require us to have a survey to apply for a permit. And there's many instances where builders built houses on property that wasn't their customers. I mean, it used to happen all the time. And then you have to do a boundary line adjustment and pay for the land that you encroached on. So anyway, the survey is definitely important. And
survey is huge.
As far as locating the house, when you guys meet with your new home consultant, when you sign the contract, they're going to give you some flags. Right. They're going to ask you to go out to your property and put the 4 corners in the ground, where you want your house. And that's just kind of, that gets you out there, it gets you walking your property. You guys can, you and your spouse can communicate about it, figure out where you want to put the house. You're going to drop these 4 flags in the ground. And then Deborah, who you're going to be communicating with Deborah, she's going to be contacting a surveyor. Once we've got your floor plans, she's going to schedule the surveyor to come out to the property and actually stake the house location. Right. You're going to want to meet the surveyor out there. You're not required to, but we highly encourage you to make it work. Meet the surveyor there. Make sure that they're putting the stakes exactly where you want them. Right. That they know where the front of the house is versus the back of the house. There's things you're going to want to consider. You're going to want to elevation of the lot, how much foundation it's going to require if it's on a slope, what side the garage should be on. You're going to always want the garage on the high side of the property. You
might have a view. You might want to be closer to the water if you're on the water, deeper in the woods, whatever. There's a lot of parameters that we'll find once that location's determined, where we can build and what can happen. And there's different, we talked about it in the land, the limits of disturbance, and there's a lot of things that go into that. But most importantly is you picking a site so that we could get the well, septic, all that stuff figured out. But then from there, it's the next set of customer responsibilities. And that is the clearing, the driveway, the culvert if it needs one. So the culvert's a little pipe that goes, in front of your driveway. Right. And those things, the clearing, the culvert, the driveway, And then we'll talk about the last one we call seed and straw. But for now, in the progression, those 3 things would be the next steps of customer responsibility in order for us to be able to build.
Right.
You can get somebody that you know to do that. We'll do another podcast on exactly how we want those constructed. I don't want to get too messy in that, but that is a customer responsibility that we have to have once the house is figured.
Right.
Then we have this clearing and this driveway that has to go in because we have to get the infrastructure in, right?
Yeah, and we're gonna help you guys with that. We're gonna give you instructions on exactly what we need. We'll give you a diagram that shows how wide the driveway needs to be, how close it needs to be to the house, how far the clearing needs to, the minimum clearing limits around the actual house site itself, so that we have room to drop materials and a dumpster and a porta-john and materials, things like that. But yeah, as far as the driveway goes, one thing that you will be required to do, and Deborah will help you with this, is to get
She's the all-star.
She is the all-star. She knows it all and can do it all, and she can just get things done.
Right. Sorry, I didn't mean to take away from your
It's all
point.
good.
The driveway, you were on the driveway.
Right. So you have to get a DOT permit, which is the Department of Transportation permit. We're going to help you through that. Right. We will make that application for you, but again, it has to come from the landowner. But they're just going to give you a permit that gives you approval for your entrance where you want your entrance.
They're going to look at things like emergency management.
Right.
Can they get a fire truck in there? Can they get an ambulance in there? So there's some criteria on how the driveway is designed, based on EMS.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things. They want to make sure that the ground is suitable for a driveway. They want to make sure the frontage is correct. You can't be very, very narrow. It has to have sight line. And so there's some clearing requirements when you have a driveway. You don't want to pull out of your driveway and get plowed over by a truck. But those are pretty relaxed. I mean,
that's pretty much
not a lot there.
Pretty much a rubber stamp. Not always. There may be some considerations, but pretty easy thing that that we help with, and they'll tell you what type of culvert, what size the culvert is.
Right.
Does it have to be concrete? Is it 12 inches, 14, 16? How big that is to allow water to flow through it. So they'll give you all those details, and then you'll be responsible for getting that driveway installed.
And that's another cost factor we don't have an allowance for. Just be aware of that. We don't provide an allowance for that because that's so site specific.
Oh, yeah.
There's no way for us to even gauge that. Some folks buy land that already has a driveway on it, power on it. It could even have an existing septic on it, and well, for that matter.
Yeah.
We've seen all that. So we don't have an allowance for those type of activities. The clearing is the one that I think gets people the most frustrated. Because I think the clearing is, you buy this piece of property and you're super excited and you've got this vision of where you want it to be, and then you've located the house and you're ready to go, and they won't let you clear so much because of jurisdiction, whether it be Chesapeake watershed or some of these areas say, nope, you can't clear up to this point and you need this much room. So it does get frustrating for people. And then I'm kind of getting off topic, but when you do finally clear, our customer responsibility is to come back and make sure that house location is there where they want it now relative to the clearing, because things really change once the clearing has happened. And it's a very dense area that you can't really visually see. That happens a lot where, oh my gosh, I think I want to clear an extra acre. They've given me the authority to do that. And then we've got to you have another cost factor. Yeah. And that happens more often than you'd think, now that I've cleared this, I have this great view. I want another 200 yards back behind the house. So clearing is a cost that can change based on your taste.
Yeah.
Based on what you want.
Yeah, absolutely.
The other thing that happens is a customer responsibility, and we really didn't talk about this pre-show. When you place your land, it is your land. We do have an allowance for $6,000, $10,000 for extra foundation. Extra foundation, I cover that in my construction conversation on foundations, but topography is something that we do. We let you guys know the elevation, but we're gonna help you place the house in the most economical space possible with the extra foundation in mind. But when you do place your home, that extra foundation, because we only offer 4 courses, is an extra on that and it could be nothing,
Right.
and it could be a lot. So just want to let you guys know that the placement of the house on your land does come with extra foundation at times as well.
Yeah, it's just part of building
is.
on your own land. I mean, really building on your own land. You know, a lot of people say, well, why don't you include the driveway and why don't you include the clearing? Well, we can't. Like Deven said, right? It's like some lots are already cleared, some already have a driveway. Some have a driveway that might be 20 feet and others that might be a mile.
Right.
It varies so widely. Some may not need any clearing at all. It's a field.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and then others, it could be, 2 acres that need cleared because the driveway has to be cleared. We need clearance on both sides of the driveway, and then we need the house site cleared, the septic area cleared. But again, we go over all this with you. The point today is really just to kind of tell you what are your responsibilities.
That's right.
So that there's clarity there.
That's
really.
right.
We want to be as clear as possible with what we do and what we don't do. And one thing to keep in mind as we go through all this stuff, we can do as much or as little of this for you as you want. So if you don't want to do any of it, we can do it all with the exception of signing the well and septic contracts.
Correct.
And we love to do it all.
And the power. They still have to get the case number.
And the power, that's correct.
They have to still get the case number. But
Yes.
everything else we take it from there anyway.
Right.
So we can facilitate all of this. We can be a totally turnkey operation if that's what you choose. And we can do everything for you. Those customer responsibilities are what we're talking about. These little nests of things that you need to know. And as we got through to clearing and driveway and culvert, really that's the construction point.
Right.
And you're pretty much done with the heavy lifting of customer responsibilities.
Right.
The one last thing that is a customer responsibility that I would say is like our classic is final grade seed and straw.
Right.
And that is something that is a often overlooked part of completing the house. So we'll let Scott talk about that, but what I can say is you will not get a certificate of occupancy without this.
Right.
Every single jurisdiction has to have it. So what do customers need to do when they're thinking about final grade seed and straw?
Yeah, I mean, typically it's going to be the same contractor who does the clearing and the driveway. And when they put the driveway in up front, it's really a construction entrance. So you're going to typically have bigger stones that are there to withstand the construction traffic.
Right.
When we get to that point, and we want to get it done as soon as possible, and your construction supervisor will coordinate with you if this is something that you choose to take into your responsibilities. It's typically going to be the same contractor, not always.
Right.
They're going to come back. They're going to, they're going to do a fine grade on the dirt.
Which means they'll grade it away from the house so that you get fall. We have certain requirements that you have drainage away from the house. So, and they all know that.
Yeah.
But this is why it's important to the town. You have to have that.
They're going to kind of clean it up. It's going to look really good at that point, and it's going to be ready for grass seed.
Right.
They require you to put grass seed down and then to put straw on top of that so that it stabilizes the property so that there's no erosion issues.
That's right.
Otherwise, you're going to get like crevices, like little Grand Canyons all through your property, right?
Yes. I mean, that's one question I get quite often is why do I need the straw? Why do I need the straw? The straw stabilizes the soil and
keeps the seed in place.
That's right. And I'm sorry, I'm going backwards again. There is another customer responsibility that's associated with erosion, is erosion control.
Right.
Silt fence is something that we don't have factored in. We have a very small amount of that factored in. Depending on your lot, the town will say you need this much soil protection, which is in the silt fence. You've probably seen them, little black fences. We need to make sure that you're aware of that. Sorry.
And we do. We include 400 feet of it. Anything that's over 400 feet, we're going to take care of it. We're going to add it. It's going to be an addendum that comes. So if you need 1,200 feet, then you're going to have an additional 800 feet of silt fence.
Just think about that.
Yeah,
Keep that in
relatively minor expense, and we don't always need it. We don't always need it. I would say more than half the time, the 400 feet is enough.
But that erosion control, back to the final grade, that's what that does. That it won't allow the soil to travel through the silt fence.
Yeah, the silt fence is there during construction to keep that silt from going off of your lot and into a stream or into your neighbor's yard or into the road.
Right, which is what the straw is for.
Right, yeah. Yep, so once the straw's there, that takes the place of it.
Right.
And hopefully the grass comes up quickly. depending on the time of the year. Maybe something to consider if you are putting grass seed down in the winter months, to use more of a rye blend. So we've got the fine grade,
seed and straw.
That's really about it as far as that goes. Except we don't include landscaping.
Right.
So if you want landscaping, if you want irrigation, if you want sod, anything like that, those are going to be things.
Rain gardens,
things like that. And again, we can include any of this stuff. We can include, on your downspouts, we can bury, we can put a drain,
4-inch
a
plastic,
pipe, on the end of that, and then run it underground away from your house. We can do anything, anything that they want to do.
Right.
Anything that you want to do, we can do. It just really depends on you and what your budget is and what you're comfortable doing versus what you don't feel like doing.
I know certain areas in Northern Virginia, certain areas in Maryland require some plantings at times.
Right.
So those are things that sometimes we don't catch. That's kind of jurisdictional dependent, and they might have told you, or you might know about that. That's something that would be a customer responsibility too.
Right.
I know we've did a couple houses that required a few trees. Sometimes that happens, and they'll even call out the type of tree.
Right, they do.
So that it's not just you can go pick whatever.
No.
Sometimes maybe, but I haven't seen that.
No.
So I think we've covered most of the customer direct responsibilities. I think that, hopefully you're taking notes, and hopefully you've got lots of questions for us. But I think the last big piece is what I'd like to talk about is we've mentioned the 150 days. We've mentioned Deborah's name. We've got a ton of back office support that will help through this process, but it really is a team effort to get through this. It can be an absolutely enjoyable experience if you're connected with us and you're engaged in the 150-day schedule. The construction schedule, you'll get updates from your supervisors all the time. Salespeople will give you weekly updates, but you'll have information from our construction managers. Just before we get to pre-construction, there's a lot of responsibilities that you're gonna have that aren't like seed and straw.
Right.
It's come in and pick your cabinets.
Yeah.
It's those types of things, right?
Right. Yeah. Fun stuff.
Yeah, the fun stuff for some, right? But obviously, I don't do well.
It's typically fun for the wife
with my matching.
Not so fun for the husband.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, I can't get him on.
Devin, you wore another plaid shirt.
Yeah, I like plaid, but those are types of things that the salespeople keep you attuned to. But getting into those meetings and making those decisions and having as much information up front that you can get is important, because that can delay a job significantly if you're not totally decided on certain things, right?
Right, yeah.
And that can make an impact. So, we offer changes, we offer customization. That's who we are through.
Right.
We want to help manage that, but you got to know that if you kind of get stalled on those types of decisions, it can have an adverse effect back to like the reason we don't have an escalation clause. And this can kind of add to the duration, right?
Yeah, that's a great point. I think, it's definitely a partnership. We want to make it enjoyable. We want to make it fun. The last thing we want is to, for there to be some sort of price increase, because then nobody's happy.
Correct.
And that's a really good point, because, we're going to do everything we can to try to make the process efficient, to start the house in less than 150 days. But if we get your plans done and we can't get you scheduled to come in to sign the plans and make your selections for 2, 3, 4, sometimes it takes 6 weeks. We just can't get somebody to come in. That's taken up a lot of time, and we can't go anywhere else until we get that stuff done. We can't apply for a permit.
Can't do anything.
Yeah, we can't do anything. So it's a team effort. It's a partnership.
Rely on you to help us help you.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
I think that we covered everything. You'll hear us call out people's names in these podcasts. So Tucker is our behind the camera gal, and she's gonna keep us in line. But did we miss anything?
No, the only thing I thought of, we didn't previously talk about with erosion control, some counties have you pay a bond.
Oh, that's a good point.
Oh, see,
that's a great point.
That's why we got Tucker.
Yeah.
So why don't you talk about the bond?
There's a few things there. So there can be a bond depending on the county. Bonds are specific to your lot or your locality. So if there's a bond required, we're going to let you know, and then that would be your responsibility to pay that bond.
That's right.
And that brings up another point too, is that sometimes there can be an ARC or an ARB attached to the lot. So I think we talked a little bit about this in the previous podcast.
In the land, yeah.
If your land is in the planned development, typically there's going to be an architectural review board or committee who are going to have certain requirements. And if they have requirements, those are things, again, we're going to help with that.
Right.
We're going to tell you, well, your ARC requires hardy board, or it requires a metal roof, or you have to have a stucco foundation, or whatever it might be.
ARC, Architectural Review Committee.
Yes.
And they if you're in certain neighborhoods, they can be sticklers. There's neighborhoods that we build in that they want what they want, and that is just what they're gonna approve, right?
Yeah.
And so that's customer responsibility for sure.
Yeah, and it kind of ties back in. I mean, basically anything that is lot specific.
Yep.
We do our best to provide the best price on the house itself, and but you have to imagine, like, we're building this house vertically on your lot, and everything that's outside of that vertical construction is something that we were, before we met you, unaware of. So that couldn't be included in your price, right? So that's where that customer responsibility comes in. But again, we're more than happy to do as much or as little of that stuff as you're comfortable with.
Absolutely. And one thing that, kind of just listening to myself talk, which I don't get an opportunity to do too much, I'm drawn towards maybe a feeling of overwhelmingness that you might feel on the other side of this. If you're listening to this and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm taking notes and I just listed 25 things that are customer responsibilities, and oh my gosh, I don't know if I can do that. I'm not sure. We're talking about everything. We want to be transparent through these podcasts. It's super important to Scott and myself that we kind of let you behind the curtain. And one of the comments we get is that we don't disclose enough of this stuff, and they weren't aware. They didn't know that they had to worry about this, or they didn't know that they had to worry about that. That's what we do. We're doing these podcasts for, to really pull back the curtain and say, hey, look, don't be overwhelmed by them, right?
Right.
Know that they're there. Know that we're going to help you through them all the way through.
Yeah.
But it's better that you are aware of them up front. It shouldn't dissuade you on whether you purchase or not. It just means that these are things that we want to educate you along the way.
Right.
So that when you hear the word well, you've watched this, you're informed, you understand. And I imagine as these release, many of you new buyers are going to watch these preparatory to coming in and writing a contract, and you're going to be armed with so much more information, which is the real reason we're doing this.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's why we decided to do this. And it can seem overwhelming, but it's really not.
It's not.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about everything here. It's like worst case scenario.
Yep.
And most of the time it's really not that much stuff. We talked about financing. We talked about the deed and the survey.
Right.
We talked about the clearing in the driveway.
Wells, septics, power. That's a lot of stuff to try to take in.
It's a lot, but it's really not that much, and we're going to help you guys through it. We're not going, we're never going to leave you hanging out there. Like we said, we've got a great team.
Right.
We're here to help. And if you guys have any questions, always reach out to us. Even if you haven't signed a contract with us, call us. We'll help. We'll give you all the information we can up front. I'll give you Devin's cell phone before we end the podcast.
Might as well.
Just kidding.
Yeah, no, I mean, and the other thing to piggyback on what Scott's saying is we're going to do a podcast. I'm not sure which episode it's going to be, but we're going to do questions and answers. So we'll get your questions directly. We'll get enough content out there for you to absorb enough. And then we want to do a whole show based on questions that you might have. We're trying to roll these out quickly so that you have that opportunity, but there'll be a Q&A opportunity.
Yeah, and I think that's important. When you guys are watching these podcasts, make sure to like them and follow us and comment. Leave your questions in the comment section.
Right.
Because we are going to compile all those questions, all those comments, and we're going to do special episodes just to address those questions.
Absolutely.
That you guys have.
What do we got else? I think we've covered it.
I think we covered it. I'm sure we missed something, but
if we did, dang it, Scott's fault.
Yeah, absolutely. Always my fault.
Scott's
I take
fault if we
responsibility.
missed it. You
But
should.
if we did miss anything that you guys are thinking of, leave it in the comments.
Absolutely.
And yeah, we appreciate you guys' time.
We're happy you're here.
Happy you're here, and we'll see you again soon.
All right. Have a good one.
Take care.